as he was getting that film financed, he was trying to make a stipulation to those who were funding that film that they make a donation to help save the property. And although that original financing fell through, Joe had raised some capital. And in our crowd fund, when we were short $30,000, Joe was running around his house emptying every piggy bank he had. And he put us over the top of that $30,000. So, I don't know if I can tell that story, but we're very grateful. You're right. So with that, we'd like to open up to questions that you might have for Joe in his making the film. And we have a room. Thank you so much for coming. Is there anyone here who really didn't know anything about Tesla before they came here? Or is this a Tesla crowd? Louder? Okay. First, I just want to also thank Cinema Arts Center for letting us come here. This has been a jewel in the community for a long time. It's called New Community Cinema, and it's important to have places like this where you can be exposed to things that you wouldn't normally be exposed to. So, you know, if you came here for this event, please consider signing up with them and supporting them. So, if anyone has any questions, we could just open it up. Yes?
Joe, how long did it take to produce this film that we just saw?
About 2 years. 2 years.
Second question, some of the scenes were at the old Bethpage Village restoration?
Correct, yeah. All done on Long Island. Well, no, some in Colorado Springs and New York. Actually, yeah. But yeah, that was old Bethpage. Next question. Yes? Oh, this is going to be quick.
We got some from the.
I have a question. Did everyone get some food? There's food out in the lobby. You want to go get something and come back?
I actually have an announcement I was supposed to make before. So you will see that we have another spread out there. We'll go back to the questions, don't worry. We had a spread when you came in. Well, there's a dessert spread now. And we had two huge towers that I've never seen before, held together by chocolate. Not necessarily Tesla towers, but that was the idea. And it's a huge popcorn tower. So there was too much. And somebody's like, we should raffle it off. It's like, well, we have decided that we're going to do it as a random door prize. And as you know, Tesla loved the number 33 or threes. And so we picked number 33 on the RSVP list. So the 33rd person that signed up. So the winner of the tower that's intact and in cellophane outside is Jan Hubner. So back to Joe and the Q&A.
Yes. If only. The question was, is there a way to transmit the chocolate? Yeah.
So when you were doing your research, you knew a lot about it. What was it that you came across that you didn't know and found remarkable across?
Some of the things that I think, because there's a lot of information about Tesla out there, and we didn't want to just put together a documentary that just kind of phoned it in and rehashed all the popular points. We did want to do some deeper digging into that. Some of the most interesting stuff came from the construction of the tower, and the idea that not only did he change the dimensions of the tower, but he altered the cupola when it was already built. He just built on top of it. That was some new information. Little things like the idea that the cupola was red, you know, it was supposed to be painted red. They were interesting. The tunnels actually wasn't in this cut of the film, but we in the online version or the Blu-ray DVD, we did the first tunnel search on the property once Tesla Science Center acquired it, and it was a more primitive type of search. It was ground penetrating radar, so we couldn't get to the depth that we needed. There are techniques called hammer seismic, and they've done some of those searches since. Mark Cypher search, and they confirmed everything we had found in our initial little search, which were we had found like the openings of where the vents came up from. And Mark Seifer, his team, they went much deeper and found some great information on it. But I mean, they talk about the mystery of the towers, of the tunnel under the towers, but it really wasn't a mystery. I mean, Tesla talked about it, and George Scherf talked about it. So it was all detailed and written, and so it wasn't really a mystery that they were there. The mystery is just how it's configured, and there still is some mystery. You know, I would love to do some digging in there and you know, kind of see what else we can find. But what Mark Seifer found with his team is it's just fantastic. It's a great progression, and I hope that we continue to investigate.
Yes, thank you. I understand that Tesla had a photographic memory, so he probably had very little way of notes and other items and artifacts. But did you come across any information about artifacts that you may have left either at the site or at his places in the city?
Well, sadly, a lot of his artifacts were left at the site when it was abandoned. There's one photo in there where you see his bipolar, the pancake coil, which is the flat coil. It's a famous picture of him sitting in front of it, but you could see that was all deteriorated and taken apart. A lot of the equipment was just left abandoned in the lab for a lot of years. A lot of papers, everything, he just kind of closed it up. And, you know, there's reports that some of the equipment got thrown down the giant hole after they, so that would be interesting to explore to see if that's true. If there were, I know they can't, they're not allowed to dig there because it was a Superfund site. They did this cleanup because, you know, there's chemicals dumped down there, so whatever is down there will never be disturbed. They'll never find it unless they come up with some kind of imaging that can, you know, some kind of technology that could.
Did you learn anything interesting or knew about his documents that may have been taken by the United States government or by the Serbian government?
Well, so that's fast forward to when he died in 1943. And that's actually the subject of our film, Fragments from Olympus. But when Tesla died, the FBI raided his room at the New Yorker Hotel. And these documents have all been declassified now, so you can obtain them. So the FBI actually believed that Tesla, well, they didn't believe, they thought he might have created this death ray that he talked about all the time and gave interviews in the New York Times. And this is the height of World War II, so the OSS had gone to investigate because they didn't want, if there was any kind of military advantage it would give to the people unfriendly to the war effort. It was during the height of World War II. They wanted to, you know, seize it. So they went there. They were looking to see if maybe he had some kind of death ray. There was a report from the FBI report. You could see that they thought that, or someone had told them that a prototype that cost $10,000 was built. So they wanted to get to the bottom of that. I'm going to bring that all into today because all of his stuff was seized. It was held by the Office of Alien Property, and they really didn't have a legal right to hold it because Tesla was a naturalized citizen. So his nephew, Sava Kosanovic, who Tesla intensely disliked, well, he was working for the Yugoslavian government, and the king was in exile, and they wanted to get all of Tesla's papers. So the FBI, U.S. government, didn't have a legal reason to hold on to Tesla's effects, so they had to release them. So they had an expert come in and read through everything to make sure we didn't give any secrets away, you know, to another country. And does anyone know the person who went through the documents? John J. Trump. It was Donald Trump's uncle. Hard to believe, right?
Yeah.
No, he was an MIT professor. He went through. So anyway, so kind of bringing it to today, but yeah, so that was much later, and yes, I'm sure that whatever was sent over there, you know, U.S. government has a copy of it, you know, so.
So that's actually a really good question. Can we really say we have a copy? There's been other History Channel shows that have gone over to Serbia and have gone into the National Library to try to review and see the documents from Tesla. Very little is actually public.
Right.
Saying about our documents.
Well, I mean, there are, the FBI documents, I think I got 240 pages. A lot of it's very repetitive, and there are a lot of redactions in it. But it is interesting to watch the FBI talking about death ray and, you know, and that's the part that really got me interested in Tesla. I was more into the fringe part of Tesla, but as I learned about the more verifiable things that he did, it just seemed more interesting. And that's the path I started down. So.
If you have a question, we're going to bring the mic to you because our webcast people are having difficulty hearing the question.
Okay.
And Joe, repeat the question before
Absolutely.
you answer it so
I'm
that
sorry. Yeah.
they don't.
By the way, thank you everyone on the webcast. Thank you for joining us. It's great to have you here in Huntington, Long Island.
We have a question here.
Yes.
Hi. The metal and the wood that was in the tower that was sold off for scrap, was any of that used for local housing, or what happened to it, do we know?
That no idea. But we might have found some of it. But I guess that's for another time. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't ask the question. I didn't rephrase the question, sorry.
Is there anybody trying to make Tesla's original idea happen?
The question is there anybody trying to make Tesla's original idea happen? There are a lot of scientists. I know the Coram brothers are always experimenting. Whether or not Tesla could have succeeded is a big question that scientists debate. Experts I've spoken with believe that from a telecommunications point of view, it would have been a huge success. But the debate about sending that much power on an industrial level, that is something that is open for debate. But there are scientists pursuing it. It's just like making the documentary. You have to go through so many different things to find out what's real, parse through the truth and what isn't. And with Tesla, there's a lot of free energy stuff, and there's a lot of stuff that just goes off into tangents. And it's sad because even when Tesla talked about free energy, it was never free. It was, you always had to resonate the earth. He had a coal burner to power it. It still cost money. It wasn't like it was really free, but I guess it was giving access to energy to any point on the globe is what he was trying to do. And I think where I would like to see people explore it more is, Tesla wasn't trying to just put a whole bunch of, volts into the ground. He talked about the principle of resonance and resonating the earth and people kind of tapping into it. And, I would, the efforts of Tesla Science Center, my efforts, at least from my point of view, I'm trying to rehabilitate some of his reputation because he has a reputation of being a kook, and that has hurt him within the scientific community. But I think now people are starting to give him, more of a look and look at some of his ideas and see if they're practical. It definitely is something that should be explored. I think. He was a visionary and he had a lot of ideas. And he thought of things before they happened. He was laughed at as a fool when he was giving lectures and talking about certain things. When he talked about his bladeless turbine, at the speed that it turned, they literally laughed at him in the room. But when they measured it, they saw that he was correct in his thoughts. I mean, he talked about subatomic particles that have a slight electric charge that people laughed at him, but years later they found, discovered quarks, and it was exactly as he had outlined. So I think you always have a scientific consensus, but sometimes it's good to have an open mind and explore a different way, and Tesla always did. And his induction motor was people called it a perpetual motion machine. They never thought he could create a motor that runs on AC power. So by sticking with his own determination, he was able to achieve this. So I don't think we should just look at him as a kook and just dismiss it because it seems impractical. I think it's something that I wish scientists would be more open to and an experiment, and not just negate it right out. Does that answer?
So,
Thank you. So talking about rehabilitating and Tesla as a quote-unquote kook, what did the Supreme Court do a few years later regarding
Marconi? Yeah, which is going to be part of the subject of my next documentary. I'll tell you about that later. But Tesla fought his whole life. Marconi had violated 17 of his patents, so he sued his whole life. But he didn't live, sadly, to see the verdict, but the Supreme Court did overturn it and declared Marconi patents invalid, which gave the claim back to Tesla. I just didn't live to see it.
But one follow-up to that is because of that, the Supreme Court overturned it. They haven't overturned all the textbooks. Can you find a textbook in a high school or a college that gives him credit for that?
Absolutely, yeah. The radio awards are called the Marconi Award. And mind you, Marconi made great contributions to radio. It was really a collaborative effort, but Tesla definitely deserves his due for sure.
Right. Credit should be given where credit is due.
Absolutely.
If Tesla's getting the patents back, that means that money should follow. Any way of getting some of that money, maybe for the center?
The patents are expired, right?
They're expired?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Some of the patents expired while he was alive, and actually part of the reason the tower came down is he lost a lot of income from some of his most important patents. So
Okay. Didn't know that.
it was sad. Everything at once hit Tesla. Yeah, it was terrible.
I was just thinking when reading Nikola Tesla, I think one of the beauties of it is his ability to merge the hard science with the magic, with the kind of political speculation. So I'm wondering if you see a way of merging this idea of the kook and the hard scientist.
Well, what you say is right. He was almost a contradiction, because in one way he said human beings are meat machines. They're just meat and electrical impulses. And then in the other, he had a very more spiritual side. He thought brains were a mystical transmitter. And he claimed that if two brains were at the same frequency, they could read each other's thoughts. And he claims when his mother died, he knew his mother died because he had this vision that she died. So he was this strange dichotomy of the rigid scientist and then almost mysticist. And he was a friend of was it Ravi Kanender, Swami Kanender, Vivekananda, right? Yeah. So he was very open to Eastern thought and he loved his pigeons too, which he also thought he was connected to his favorite pigeon. That a pigeon would come via telepathy. When he thought of this pigeon, it would come to him. So he so he does. I guess that's a reason why there's a big fringe movement, and people of people who were into yoga and people who were into UFOs and all these different more supernatural type interests, they gravitate towards Tesla too. So you have scientists and mysticists. I guess merging that would be a natural, outgrowth of his own personality.
Hi, as the fourth generation electrician in New York City, I've seen some DC equipment. So I'm very interested in the AC-DC wars. What would you say was the tipping point that pushed us into AC?
The Columbia Exposition. This was an exposition in 1893, and Thomas Edison was bidding to do the electric for it, and Westinghouse, who had leased Tesla's patents, was bidding to do the electric. And it was very important because it was on the cusp of the world starting to be electrified, and they were talking about building a plant at Niagara Falls, and people were bidding for that too. So the Columbia Exposition was like a World's Fair to show off the city of the future. You know, they called it the White City. And they competed, and Tesla and Westinghouse won the bid. And when people saw it, the city lit up for the first time. They turned the switch on, and people saw a city lit up at night. And I don't know if this is apocryphal or not, but supposedly Frank L. Baum, who wrote The Wizard of Oz, was there at that moment, and that gave him the inspiration for the Emerald City. But yes, so when President Grover Cleveland threw the switch and turned the night into day, there was a chorus of Handel's Messiah, and people were supposedly just awestruck, and that's when the Battle of the Currents it was over. You know, they saw that alternate current was it was magic. It was efficient. It was not only lighting the lights, it was also powering the trolleys. It was doing way more, and it was at a much cheaper cost. So that's when AC really won over DC.
Joe, we have someone from Czechoslovakia who would like to know, why do you think so many people, especially in America, have never heard of Tesla?
Yeah, and you were just pointing it out. It's not in the textbooks. I mean, Tesla is not in our educational system, which is really a travesty. That's why it's so important to support organizations like Tesla Science Center, who do STEM programs and are helping to educate people. But you know, he was marginalized by corporate interests. There were scientific rivalries, perhaps government suppression. There are a lot of reasons we don't know about Tesla, or didn't know about Tesla. So it's important that we go back and we look at him. We start giving him the credit for the things that he deserved. I mean, we have a list in the film of a whole bunch of things in the beginning. You know, microwaves, remote control, all these different things. Did you know that Tesla invented that stuff or came up with that idea first? Yeah. So it's in fact, he has one patent from 1898 for the teleautomaton, which really demonstrated radio. It demonstrated that was basically a remote control boat that he was operating without wires at the Madison Square Garden Science Convention, and people could not believe it's horses and carriages outside, and here is Tesla operating this boat wirelessly, and people thought that he had a trained monkey in the boat. So, but that was a very important patent because it also not only had the principle of radio in it, but it had what is known as the logic A&D gate, which is, very, you couldn't have computer technology without it. So Tesla contributed to the birth of the computer, with that logic gate, and that was just a byproduct. He invented that as part of this teleautomaton. So, it's pretty interesting. I kind of forgot what the question was. I think I trailed off.
No, you did good.
Why don't we know about Tesla? Did I answer it, or should I? Yeah.
In the movie, I noticed that his father had a different name. It was Nikola something. Why was that?
Oh, you're talking about William Turbo, which, by the way,
What was it?
No, Turbo was
William Turbo's father? No.
No.
No, Nikola.
Tesla's father, they showed.
Father had a different last name.
No, that was William Turbo's father in the movie.
Nikola something?
Yeah, Trebojevic. Trebojevic.
Yeah, that's it.
By the way, I just want to point out that we lost William Turbo last year. It was very his efforts, supporting Tesla Science Center, and he was a friend of mine and supported me, and very very big loss. So I just wanted to say that, and the Tesla Science Center now has part of his collection. So one of their very first exhibits will be the William Turbo collection. So that's good. And I also want to say Nikola Tesla from Tesla's Ambassadors also passed away last year. So I just want to give a shout out for him because he did a lot of good work in promoting Tesla's legacy. Yes.
I had a question. I wanted to know why Edison and Tesla both were located on Long Island. Was that because of potential communication to the rest of the world, more ease of communication?
Well, it's funny. Actually, I'm doing the new documentary I'm working on. Talks about actually Tesla was on Long Island, Marconi was on Long Island. Tesla was in Shoreham. Marconi was in Sagaponack and Babylon. Yeah, and there was another wireless innovator called Telefunken in Sayville. And that is a very interesting story, and that's why we're doing research on that, and that's what we're going to talk about, the interactions between all of them, but I'll get to more of that later. But why Long Island? Well, it was one of the closest points to reach Europe, and during the radio, the wireless battles, people wanted to be able to reach Europe, so it made sense to be on the farthest point that you can be. Yet it was still close enough to a major hub in New York, so that's probably why Long Island was so significant in the development of early wireless.
What was Tesla's education?
Tesla's Polytech Institute in Graz, right? In Hungary. Right? He was also very self-learned. I mean, he knew 8 languages. He read volumes and volumes of books, and had a photographic memory. So he was well educated. It was math and science, right? It was mathematics too, I think, at Polytech in Graz. That was in Austria. I'm sorry. He was in Budapest at the okay. Yeah, I'm jumping around. Right in Austria.
Could you elaborate more on 3, 6, and 9?
3, 6, and 9. I don't know if I really can. I mean, Tesla was kind of obsessed with these numbers. Everything had to be divisible by 3 for Tesla, and he died in room 3327. He would circle the building 3 times. Right. The 18 napkins, was it? Yeah, because it was divisible by 3. So he would polish each fork 18 times, so he was really obsessed with the number 3. Also, I guess, let's see, where did that historically fall into something? When he was designing the polyphase system, and Westinghouse engineers would fight with him over what hertz everything should operate at, and Tesla insisted 60 hertz. Not because it was divisible by 3, but he was very, very adamant about that. And it was very frustrating to work with Tesla because he had worked everything out in his head, and everybody else had to go through the process. So they would finally get to his conclusion way later, just totally frustrating him. But they were frustrated by him, and because they said no, you have to go through the steps. So. Yeah, he had an obsession with these numbers. He had a bunch of different obsessions. And I don't like to focus on them too much because, again, I just don't want to paint him as, some type of crazy person, but he definitely had, some sort of obsessive compulsive disorder. He had certain things he was repulsed by, like pearls or touching people's hair. But I guess this goes with genius,
A lot of people are inspired when they're young. What did you learn about his childhood, his early life that would have maybe shown that he was, inclined at a much higher thinking level?
Well, his mother was an inventor, invented things around the house, and I think he credits her with getting him kind of started. He had invented a water wheel and I think a June bug powered wheel, so he was an inventor as a young boy. His father was a priest and wanted him to go into the priesthood. And the story is Tesla was very ill. He didn't want to go into the priesthood. He wanted to follow mathematics and science. And he was ill, and he made a deal with his dad that if his dad gave up on forcing him to go into the church, he would get better. And he did. And it was, that was a tough time. I mean, his village was like ravaged by like cholera and all kinds of epidemics. It was a tough time to grow up. His brother died very young in an accident. So he overcame a lot, and he got an education and came to the U.S. to work with Edison, ironically. And that didn't work out so well. Yeah.
Joe, a quick question, right here. Look.
Oh, okay.
Hi. So, looking at the way you portrayed all the projects and the beautiful artwork on your film, it seemed to me that so big of these efforts that he seemed to juggle a lot of these efforts at once. Am I correct in assuming that?
Tesla, yeah. He was very, when I went to Belgrade and I went to the museum, they let me in the back and I got to look at his bookcase. And he was so into learning everything. He was learning there were books about copper smelting and all these different, he just got into the weeds of every part of his scientific craft almost. So he was busy doing a million different scientific things, but he's also learning about things that lead to his discoveries.
But some of these things that you portray had to take years and years. It just didn't happen overnight. So he had to have like rolling amounts. And if that was the case, how did he make his own money? Because obviously if he had to put so much of his money in the end product of the tower, he had to be making money from somewhere.
Well, a couple of things. One, to address time, he slept very little. He really, he claimed to only sleep a few hours a night. But as for money, money-wise, he got patent royalties. He got investors here and there who would, invest stuff. So he had money. He would spend the money, and sadly, when he ripped up the contract with Westinghouse, if only he would have said, "Give me stock," we might be in a different world today. We don't know.
I didn't understand why he didn't tap into the Waldorf Astoria and the other Astor guy more.
Well,
he focused too much on Morgan.
I think some of the behind the scenes, Astor had invested a bunch of money, gave to Tesla to develop these precursors to fluorescent lighting. And I think Tesla took a lot of that money and went to Colorado Springs with it. So I think Astor might have been a little bit hesitant until he got something back, but he never kicked him out of his hotel. He always let him, he still considered him a friend, Tesla, he had a propensity to just do what he thought he had to do with the money. The money didn't mean anything to him. It was just a means to an end. He had an end goal in mind, and he would...
I agree he was a friend, and that's why he was able to save the Waldorf, but it was more than that, for sure, in that he knew he was someone special, a really special talent, and he really should have elaborated on that himself, I thought. It's unfortunate.
It's a tragedy.
I read that he dropped out of college because he had a gambling problem. And
he did.
I thought it was surprising, someone who didn't care about money, that he would have a gambling problem. Was it because of the mathematical?
Probably. Probably was. It had to do with the odds, right? And the story is that his mother gave him the money and told him to just go and get rid of it and get it out of your system. Yeah. I wouldn't want to play cards with him, I'll tell you that. Yeah, but no, that is interesting. And, but he had a very, you know, he never drank. He had a very disciplined personality. He was a disciplined scientist, disciplined mathematician. So that is, it's another inconsistency in his overall character. But an interesting one.
Was he ever tested for his IQ? And secondly, did he ever interact with Einstein?
He did interact with Einstein. I don't know about the IQ. There's a joke that goes around with Einstein, and someone says to Einstein, "What does it feel like to be the smartest man on Earth?" And Einstein says, "I don't know. Go ask Tesla." Yeah. Tesla was not a proponent of relativity. So when Einstein was coming up with theories, Tesla had some resistance to that. But Einstein was always very friendly to Tesla. I've read a few letters that Einstein sent to Tesla, just greetings, a birthday letter he sent to him and stuff. But I think Tesla did take some jabs at Einstein in the press sometimes. In fact, fragments from Olympian Gossip, isn't there Einstein when he's talking about cosmic phone and stuff like that? I think it's a little bit of an Edison jab, because Edison was, Tesla was part showman. Tesla, he wanted to show what he knew, and I think when Edison was getting a lot of attention for some theories that Tesla didn't agree with, I think it might have, just rubbed his nose the wrong way or whatever. But as far as I know, they were friendly.
Going back to the mysticism part about Tesla, do you think that if he found out how to tap into the natural energy flow going on around us with all the electrical signals and stuff, and kind of saw through the spiritual, physical dichotomy of that, to learn how to use that energy in ways that he could pass on to everybody else that would benefit people largely and also freely, do you think this could be the reason why J.P. Morgan Chase kind of prevented him from finishing that project?
It's anything's a possibility. There are so many theories why, even theories that J.P. Morgan didn't want Ann Morgan to have a relationship with Tesla. Probably the most likely reason was just pure greed. Tesla threatened J.P. Morgan's other industries. So that's probably the most likely as far as J.P. Morgan is concerned, because he was his primary concern was money, and he didn't want to change his whole business model because Tesla was gonna, or he thought Tesla would uproot the whole system.
Oh, I'd say one thing about Tesla and Einstein. With Einstein, he was all about coming up with theories in his mind, and theoretical, discussions, and Tesla was all about doing experiments, and to get much more practical and empirical data, and going out and getting your hands dirty and actually doing it. But I did want to ask a question back to the remote control boat that he had.
The teleautomaton. Yeah.
Right. I've seen like little drawings where people are kind of depicting that, and you get this impression it's like a little bitty boat inside.
Oh, it's big.
Water,
Tesla Science Center has a replica. Yeah.
It's about, okay, that's what I thought. It's much bigger.
Yes.
I thought I saw a picture in the movie there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's a huge thing.
Yeah, it's hard to believe it floats.
Right.
Right. There were several different versions. One version appears to be part of a wireless torpedo prototype. It has a much lower profile, and he was trying to market it to the Navy. So I think the picture of Wardenclyffe, that's the different model. I think that might be the torpedo. I'm trying to find some answers on there.
Probably why they thought they had a monkey.
Yeah.
So I'd like to do a little shout out from the movie. One of the best scenes in there was the Tesla Science Center board member saying that they had to educate the Smithsonian
Right, that was, yeah, actually Tesla Science Foundation, yeah.
Science Foundation, okay.
Yeah, they told them they didn't display Tesla stuff because Tesla was not a citizen of the United States. I mean, it's.
But I think though, because the Smithsonian History, Museum of American History does now have several Nikola Tesla pieces in permanent display. I traveled there several years ago to find a plaque on one of the Niagara Mohawk generators. It was from Westinghouse. 9 out of the 13 patents are attributed to Tesla with the numbers.
Wow.
So if you ever get a chance to see that, it's also on my Instagram page, photograph of that. And I had and it was a little hidden.
Yeah.
But it's there.
I'll tell you something. I was up Niagara Falls. We were location scouting, and I got a tour of the Birch Reinke powerhouse, which is also designed by Stanford White, and that was Tesla's powerhouse there. And they said if you film in here, and they had all the gear is still there, and it's beautiful, it's pristine. They said if you film in here, you can't touch anything on this panel. And I said, why not? So, well, that actually supplies backup power to our new power station. I was thinking, oh my goodness, this station is still operational. It's amazing. Yeah.
Is it true that Tesla and Einstein both worked on the television?
You know, there's a lot of kind of misinformation about stuff Tesla and Einstein worked on. And people are always emailing me about the Philadelphia experiment and all these kinds of strange secret government projects. There's no conclusive. No, that's true. That's true.
And of course, it did have a Tesla coil in it.
Right? Well, Tesla was he had moved on to his thought camera. He was trying to create a camera, a thought camera that would capture your imagination. So Tesla did.
When he first came to America, he went to work for Edison, right?
Yes.
And Edison told him, hey, I'll give you $50,000 if you can find a way to get my DC power to go more than 1.5 miles before.
According to Tesla, yeah, that's Tesla's version.
He did do that, and when he went to Edison for his money, Edison said, "Oh, that's an American joke."
Yeah, you don't understand our American sense of humor.
Yeah.
The Edison people will tell you that didn't happen, and that Tesla offered to sell his patents to them for $50,000, and they said no, or his idea. But yeah.
It's cool to learn about Edison.
Yeah, but not Tesla. But Tesla did resign from the job, so I tend to be in the camp of what Tesla said, his version of the story. Yeah.
Someone online is asking if the tower was ever finished enough to be turned on, or how far did it get?
Yes, it was fired up a few times, a few nights in July of 1904, I think. 1903 was. Okay. 1906, and Tesla had nothing to do with it. That's a common one that we have to talk about. Tesla had no operational equipment at the time of the time to go.
At that time, the bird was at the North Pole. He wanted to show, give him a big light show.
Yeah, that'll come. I know he was not there. It was, and he had no generators there. That what you're talking about, that came from a letter to the editor that Tesla wrote about, but that was misconstrued as him wanting to send a message to Bird. He was talking about something else. If you read the context of the letter, it's not yeah, that's what's been said, but he had nothing to do with Tunguska, I can assure you. He did not have the capability at the time. Yeah.
All of us here know who Nikola Tesla was, but I still think most of the world doesn't. If there's any way we could associate the science of his tower and his radio-controlled boat with our ubiquitous cell phones, we might really get a lot of people on board.
Yeah. I mean, the whole concept. Well, let me let me say something else. In Wardenclyffe, there you'll see, in some of the photos, you'll see his tuning table. And his tuning table, which he had at Housing Street, that was an early example of wiretricity. And he was doing wireless transmission and charging almost from that over 100 years ago. So, he really contributed to the modern world, not just from a vision point of view, but in actual execution. He actually had achieved some of these experiments. When you think of Wardenclyffe, he really came up with the idea for the internet. I mean, he wanted to connect the whole world by transmitting images and sounds and information and wirelessly. I mean, that is the internet. I'm going to give the mic to Jane Alcorn. Do you know Jane Alcorn is actually here tonight? President of the Center?
Just just a quick story about what was just mentioned about Tesla and his vision. While he was at Wardenclyffe in 1904, without he was still visiting there, he was interviewed by a Boston newspaper, and the reporter asked him about some of the things he was doing, what he foresaw, and he said, well, someday man will be able to carry in his vest pocket a device with which he will be able to communicate voice, picture, documents, and sound. This was in 1904. And today we all walk around with that. No, it was 1904. I've seen the... Yeah, I've seen the newspaper article, and it's in a Boston newspaper from 1904. So the 1926 is actually maybe a repeat of the same story.
And I think also too, at one point you talked about women would be able to raise their parasol and use that as an antenna to connect to all this wireless information. He had some great ideas. He talked about pulling nitrogen out of the air using electricity to fertilize crops and things like that. He wrote about this stuff in 1899, before even 1900. Big proponent of wind power too, renewable powers even back then.
Something else about the Columbian Exposition that Joe was telling you about, and the World's Fair that was supposed to be 1892 in commemoration of the 400th anniversary of Columbus arriving in the New World. And as part of that War of the Currents, of course, Edison was bidding on lighting up the fair, and so was Westinghouse. And Westinghouse and Tesla, with Tesla's patents, won that bid. One of the problems they faced, however, was that Edison owned the patent for the light bulbs, and Edison refused to allow his bulbs to be used to light the fair. The way the patent worked was that there was a stopper at the bottom of the light bulb that connected to the system. And so Tesla had to come up and invent with his own idea and invent his own design for light bulb stoppers so that they could light the fair. And he was able to do that. Also, that was the place where Lord Kelvin and a whole group of other scientists were visiting, and they were the ones who were going to make the decision about electrification for the United States, what the standard was going to be. And when they saw what happened there, they realized that that would be the path to follow for Niagara.
It's a great story.
Could we actually just circle back for a second to how far the tower got and whether it was turned on? I'm not sure you got to complete the thought.
Okay, yeah, so it was turned on. And people from as far as Connecticut talked about a corona on the top of the tower. In this state, it would have been just as you saw it in the film with the just the girders. It would not have been finished with the... Tesla never got to finish it. The last step he got was to put the cupola on top, but he never got to finish it with the casing. There's one or two shots in there of what it was supposed to look like finished, almost like this finished lighthouse, and then it had this sort of weird kind of fly eye top to it. Those were all supposed to be, I guess, capacitors or storage cells for the electricity. So, and then you see that the animated picture of all the flying machines and stuff. That was from a Hugo Gernsback drawing or of what Tesla was describing, electrifying. And that's a whole other thing. He was talking about electrifying everything from the central point, so these things would be flying around with power from Wardenclyffe. So that was the whole idea. They wouldn't be on their own power.
The casing that you were talking about that were completed, how much more what else would that allow it to do, as opposed to what was still in there when he turned it on with?
Yeah, I mean I guess the functioning part would have been the casing on the cupola. That was really the most important part that had to be done. The edifice was just that. It was just to just to finish off the tower.
So was it for aesthetics in your state, or was it for
the edifice on the outside was just for aesthetics, but the cupola top, to finish that off, was not aesthetics. That was had to do with storage of the actual charge.
It almost makes you wonder what else in our history has been altered or doctored, with preference to one story as opposed to another.
I'll say it again. It almost makes you wonder what other parts of American history, global history, have been altered or doctored. Just looking at the story of Tesla, we said, all right, we don't give him any credit at all. I can't remember, I graduated from high school now 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, so I can't remember any of my history textbooks. My first exposure to Tesla was when David Bowie played him in The Prestige. So, it just makes you wonder what else could have been altered or changed in our history, or, that's much all they played down.
It's a very good point. Just going back to David Bowie and The Prestige, there are the experiments of the light bulbs all lighting up in the field. That was an actual experiment. Tesla, only 3, right? Only 3. But he did not really clone cats or hats or anything like that. But the light bulbs demonstrated wireless power, electricity going through the earth. And that was another thing. There's a lot of talk about Tesla, electrifying, parts of the ionosphere, but Tesla had got beyond that by the time he was working on Wardenclyffe. His method was to go through the earth. And you're making a point that how skeptical you are of other things in school because you didn't learn this obvious stuff about Tesla, and that's a great point. I mean, there were 2 kids, we're not kids anymore in this film, and my goodness, when I heard them talk, they were really enlightened about Tesla. But, their librarians didn't know who Tesla is. Sometimes I'm in Shoreham, and I'll be speaking to people, and they don't know who Tesla is. You don't know who Tesla is? You live right here? So, yeah, it does. So it is very important to get Tesla back in the school system. Tesla Science Center is doing it through STEM and other kinds of programs. So that's one step in the right direction. But, when young people grow up and start writing the curriculum, that's when Tesla perhaps will get back in. So it's good to educate people now while they're young.
Educate the educators.
There are lots of times there are myths about Tesla that people believe in. One of our jobs is really about dispelling some of those myths. For example, the tower coming down, as Joe portrayed it in the movie, you can see that it was really to recover the resource from the timber and the metals to pay off some of Tesla's debts. But there were several little newspaper articles at the time that said it was because it came down because the government wanted it to. That it was considered a place that could be used as a navigational aid for the enemy. And so that's one of the things that we try to do is get to the truth as we can find it. I mean, sometimes we make mistakes too, but we try really hard to get to the truth of the matter. And so we hope that you'll all go out there and make sure that people know that it didn't come down because it was a navigational aid, but that it came down for the reason that Joe had the movie. And we do have a couple of pieces of the actual tower. We had some metal detectors out and busy, and we found a plate and a bolt from the tower, so that's kind of exciting. We have some real pieces.
That's right, very exciting.
I've been a Tesla fan for a long time. I went to the library when I was about 14 years old, and I got a book on Tesla's his theories, lectures, and patents. And this was when I was 14. That's 56 years ago I knew of Tesla. So
The smart people always knew who Tesla was.
people knew who he was even
Yes.
back then.
Yes.
Just, he wasn't
Well, if they didn't, I mean, those
portrayed in
people,
history in our
those people were the
classes.
torchbearers, really. I mean, without those people, he would have been forgotten.
So we should probably, we're approaching 10 o'clock, when we're going to conclude. I want to talk about, very briefly, our next two events, and I'm going to let our board president close the program. So our gala, the first gala ever for the Tesla Science Center, will be June 4th. We're holding it at Flower Fields in, I believe, St. James. And so you'll hear a little bit more about that over the next couple of months. And then, as you know, every summer around Tesla's birthday, we hold a birthday celebration for Tesla. The expo, his birthday expo, will be on July 13th this year. So with that, turn it over to Jane and make the closing remarks.
Before Jane, we pass it to Jane. Please get yourself a T-shirt on your way out because it will support the Tesla Science Center. There's a little stand there, T-shirts and bags and some other merchandise, so you can show your support.
Well, first, I want to thank all of you for being here and being supportive of our efforts, and you being here makes a big difference to us, and we hope you'll be supporters both in word and in deed, and there are lots of ways to do that, of course, and so we thank you for this deed, being here. I also want to thank Mark for taking us so far since he's our first executive director, and he's been doing a wonderful job encouraging people to support our cause, and we certainly really appreciate that. And also, I think Debbie, who's in the back there, and has really made all of this happen. And Lisa and her team, who've been absolutely great with marketing and working with Debbie. And most of all, Joe, who made this fabulous film for us all to enjoy. So thanks, Joe.
And thank you to the 33,000 contributors to Tesla Science Center. Plus. Thank you very much.